There's widespread anger in Chile after prosecutors decided not to charge the owners of a mine where 33 workers were trapped for more than 2 months back in 2010. The collapse at the San Jose mine attracted worldwide attention as people around the globe followed the fate of the men. They watched as they were saved one by one in a dramatic rescue operation. CCTV's Anna Naidu reports.
For 69 days in 2010, the world watched and waited with bated breath. 33 miners were trapped deep underground after the 120-year-old copper and gold mine they were in collapsed. The rescue operation, when it came, was watched live on television around the world. Rescuers brought the men to safety one by one in a specially constructed capsule. All the miners were saved, but the accident raised serious questions about safety at the mine. Now, after a 3-year investigation, officials have found no one was to blame.
Since the evidence gathered is not sufficient, it does not provide enough to bring charges.
That conclusion is being met with deep anger by some of the miners who were trapped underground.
Today, I just feel like making a hole and burying myself, but this time they shouldn't find us.
Some former top government officials have also slammed the finding.
If there would have been ladders set up at the ventilation shaft, as it had been requested in audits done in 2007 and 2008, then 33 miners would not have spent 70 days of hell in those conditions.
A lawyer for 31 of the 33 miners said the legal team would review the report and present its own findings. A civil lawsuit seeking millions of dollars in compensation for the damage suffered by the miners has already been filed. Anand Naidu, CCTV.
For more on the Chilean miners and their legal battle, I'm joined now by Janet Johnson from Florida. She is a criminal defense lawyer. Janet, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Got to ask you, the reaction from that charismatic leader of the miners, he said, you know, today I want to dig a deep hole and bury myself again, only this time I don't want anyone to find me. He's crestfallen. It really is a slap at these miners, and it runs counter to a congressional investigation, which back in 2011 said the mine owners could have avoided the collapse. So give me your analysis of this decision by prosecutors.
Yeah, Mike, it's really heartbreaking because not only did the prosecutors say that the owners weren't responsible, but also that the agency that was overseeing this whole operation, that they're not responsible either. And what they said ultimately was this was an act of nature and that there was nothing that they could have done, which, as you said, that is a slap because, quite frankly, this mine had a horrendous record of people being killed and an amputation, I think, just a month before this accident. So it's hard to imagine that there's no criminal liability, especially because the government is requiring them to pay $5 million to basically reimburse them for the rescue. So obviously the government doesn't want to pay for it, but they also don't want to prosecute.
And these miners are dealing with a lot of psychological trauma from this, and they can't get jobs as a result either. I mean, they've been basically blackballed from their profession. Now, the attorney for 31 of these 33 miners says he's going to analyze the prosecution's decision before announcing whether he will fight it. If he does choose to fight it, what do you think his options are, and what are his chances of success?
Well, there's two different issues. One is he is definitely going to pursue the civil lawsuit, which essentially he's looking for about $500,000 in US dollars for each miner, which does not sound like a lot of money given what they went through. But he's talking about appealing the regional prosecutor's decision, which he may have a mechanism to do that. But quite frankly, the prosecutors in Chile are very autonomous, and I'm not sure anyone can force them to bring charges when they've decided not to do that.
And you mentioned the civil suit. Will this have any impact on that, do you think?
No, it will not have an impact. Had there been a criminal prosecution and had there been convictions, that would have been helpful in a civil lawsuit, but the two don't have to go hand in hand. But, you know, just morally, these men who almost died and quite frankly lived through something for 69 days that none of us can imagine, they wanted to get this as something that would be retribution, I think, for what they lived through and, quite frankly, to make sure nobody else goes through this again.
Janet, one final question. Mario Sepulveda, who I've already mentioned, this charismatic leader, was asked about this, and he said, this is how he summed up the judicial system. He said, what else can we expect? Is this kind of an indictment? Well, obviously it's an indictment on his part of the judicial system, but should it be indicted?
Well, from the outside, we can't say if there's corruption. We don't know what went into this decision. They took 3 years. They said they went through 20,000 pages of documents. But it is hard to imagine that if they had such a shoddy safety record that they didn't know or shouldn't have known that this was going to happen. And even just something as simple as we talked about those ladders, if they could have done one thing that might have prevented this, it's hard to imagine that they're not responsible and how they came to that decision. I don't know. I can't imagine how Mario is going to live through this, but hopefully he gets something in the end from the civil court.
All right, Janet Johnson, thank you so much for joining us from Jacksonville, Florida this evening.